Oh, there. Okay, I had the wrong green button on. Okay, this is the SBCAG meeting for Thursday, December 19th, 2019, our last meeting of the year. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Directors Williams, Hart,
Here.
Hartman,
Here.
Adam, Levanino,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Clark. He's there.
Here.
Mosby,
Here.
Parodi,
Here.
Murillo, Sierra,
Here.
and Chair Patino.
Here. Okay, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance.
Oh, I did you again. Sorry.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We don't have any public comment here, but Santa Barbara said they had 3.
3?
I just
Okay.
don't know what item they're for. Al? Director Clark? Hello? Scott?
Yes, can you hear me? What
Yes.
was your question?
Are the speaker slips for public comment or for separate items?
They are for separate items. A couple from the consent calendar and then item number 7, but I don't see that here. Oh, okay. I guess 4G and then 7. Oh, 4I. 4G, 4I, and then number 7.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on then to the consent calendar and take item 4G.
Okay. Item 4G, Highway 101 HOV Cooperative Agreement with Caltrans. 4G1, adopt resolution 1947 approving cooperative agreement 050351 with Caltrans for the Highway 101 Carpinteria to Santa Barbara project, segment 4A, and acknowledge appropriation of funds. And 4G2, approve and authorize the chair to execute a cooperative agreement 050351 with Caltrans for the construction phase of the Highway 101 Carpinteria to Santa Barbara project, segment 4A. The total agreement amount is $109,960,000, including SBCAG's contribution of $23,490,000 in local funds, comprised of $1,170,000 from the Highway 101 Reserve of Regional Surface Transportation Program, $2,700,000 from the Highway Improvement Program funds, $16 million from SB1 Trade Corridor Enhancement Program funds, and $3,620,000 from the State Transportation Improvement Program Regional Improvement Program funds. And 4G3, approve and authorize the Executive Director to execute amendments to the funding summary pursuant to Article 18 of the agreement that will increase state highway operation and protection program funds or shift funding contributions between non-shop funding lines between construction overall funding contribution by SBCAG. Upon review and concurrence by legal counsel, the board must approve contributions from additional funding sources such as Measure A if required.
Okay,
Okay, we'll start with public comment down here.
okay.
Welcome, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. Now, I want to say this, that even though this is the Highway 101 project, which is mostly a county issue dealing with SBCAG, it does involve the state of California. Not only is the Highway 101 a roadway that is basically controlled by the state of California, but you're taking money today from the state of California. Now, in addition, of course, to the widening of the 101, you also have mitigation projects. Specifically, you have 2 intersection projects, one at Olive Mill and Coast Village, and the other one at San Ysidro. Those 2 roundabout projects, which are required projects for the widening project. You can't widen the freeway without at least having the money and the engineering done for those 2 intersection projects I just mentioned. This is the reason why this is important to me, especially with the state of California. The state of California right now is going to lose its emission waiver from the US EPA. It's also, right now, NHTSA and EPA are going to eliminate the Obama era, it should be an error, it is an error, Obama era fuel economy standards. Now, one of the things that support the federal government's position is that the state of California could achieve everything you need to achieve for emission reductions, CO2 reductions, and fuel economy improvements if you simply obeyed CEQA. Listen to the people who are saying to you that the projects you're constructing don't need to be constructed if you had better planning of your cities and roadways. When Caltrans performed the EIR for the Highway 101 project, the one that was required, well, the original one, and then was required by the court, Caltrans deliberately and intentionally refused to look at alternatives to widening that to the widening project. The alternatives being, let's look at ways of getting people to live closer to where they work. Either move the jobs to them or move them to their jobs. Caltrans intentionally violated CEQA by not studying those alternatives. It's right there in black and white. In addition, the two intersection projects, County and City of Santa Barbara, as well as Caltrans, are doing everything they can to avoid an EIR for those two projects, because in the EIR, they'd have to study alternatives to those projects, including non-construction alternatives. And I'll go back to this later on another subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
4I.
4I, Final Santa Barbara US 101 Multimodal Corridor Plan. Adopt Santa Barbara US 101 Multimodal Corridor Plan and delegate authority to Executive Director to approve administrative edits to the corridor plan prior to submittal to the California Transportation Commission.
Okay. Santa Barbara.
Okay, Tom.
Thank you. So I'm going to continue on. This is why I love these 3-minute segments. Going on, Caltrans intentionally, with the assistance of both the County of Santa Barbara, SBCAG staff, and the City of Santa Barbara, intentionally refused to look at non-construction alternatives to these construction projects that you have planned, specifically the adding of one lane to 101 and the two intersection projects, as I mentioned before. This is why this is important. The EPA and NHTSA have both received documents saying that California could reduce its CO2 emissions, its regulated tailpipe emissions, and could reduce the consumption of petroleum projects if they simply started obeying CEQA and started responding to alternatives to these construction projects. The alternatives being, let's figure out a way to get people to be closer to where they work, move the jobs to them, and also look at other things like how does the tourist industry create that type of congestion and increase in vehicle miles traveled. The state of California right now is basically suing EPA and NHTSA in the federal district court. It's basically the Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia. And I've written letters to EPA, to Region 9, as well as to EPA headquarters back in D.C., stating that California, specifically Caltrans, as well as the California Air Resources Board, routinely, deliberately, and intentionally violates CEQA by refusing to study alternatives that are proposed in environmental impact reports for construction projects, such as the widening of the 101 and those two intersection projects, which your staff, county staff, City of Santa Barbara staff and Caltrans staff are desperately trying to build without having to perform environmental impact reports. There's a reason why, because in an EIR, you have to, by law, by CEQA, respond to alternatives. And I'll be the first one to submit alternatives to those construction projects by saying we could reduce vehicle miles traveled through better planning. If you don't build those intersection projects, you can't widen the freeway. And that's the main point here, that you people are just trying to avoid those EIRs. And I'll continue on to the other,
Thank you.
number 7. Thank you.
Okay, is there a,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
On item 4B, the board meeting schedule for 2020,
yes.
I accidentally put the wrong schedule, and I attached it to your packet, so I put a new schedule on your desk on the dais, and I will make sure I get it emailed to your assistants and to you all after the meeting.
Okay, because on the schedule, I noticed that the League of Cities did not conflict with the schedule. So what is the current?
Well, the schedules, I put a new schedule on your on the dais. That's new, and I'll make sure I get it to you guys as well.
And the
The one
League is,
attached to your packet is wrong. Let's
yeah,
put it that
but the
way.
League of Cities should still not
It will not
Yeah,
conflict.
because it's only
Okay.
a day off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's fine, thank you. Okay, is there any, is there a motion from the board to approve the consent item?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Do I have a second? Second. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Director Hart? Aye. Hartman?
Aye.
Levanino? Johnson? Rubalcaba?
Aye.
Mosby?
Aye.
Perotti? Aye. Clark?
Aye.
Murillo? Aye. Sierra?
Aye.
And Chair Patino.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay. Mr. Contreras, could you please read item number 5 into the record?
Certainly. Item 5, Santa Barbara Call Box Removal Plan. 5A, acting as the Santa Barbara County Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies, approve the call box removal plan. 5B, direct SBCAG staff to submit the call box removal plan to the California Highway Patrol and Caltrans as required under Streets and Highways Code Section 2557D2 and 5C. Find the call box removal plan is exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to 14 CR 15301C, as the proposed project consists of operation, repair, maintenance, or minor alteration of existing public or private structures, facilities, mechanical equipment, or topography features involving negligible or no expansion of use beyond that previously existing, including but not limited to existing highways and streets, sidewalks, gutters, bicycle and pedestrian trails, and similar facilities, and approve the filing of the attached notice of exemption on that basis.
And the staff presentation will be made by Mr. Epperson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Kent Epperson. I'm the Director of Traffic Solutions at SBCAG. And one of my responsibilities is managing the SAFE program, which includes the call box program and the Freeway Service Patrol. Kind of a big item here for the call box program. I wanted to first give you a little background about the call box program. So the SAFE program, the Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies, that program was developed in the mid-'80s. And around 1990, SBCAG was actually designated as the authority for Santa Barbara County to manage the SAFE program. At that point, we were then given the authority to collect $1 per car registration for the use of call boxes and other programs, similar programs. So shortly thereafter, your board installed about 354 call boxes throughout our county on most of the highways throughout Santa Barbara County. The call box program is comprised of a few contracts. One, the most significant one, is a maintenance contract, Case Systems. They're pretty much the only game in town. They operate nearly all of the call boxes throughout California. And they maintain them. When there's a knockdown, they'll put them back up, and they do periodic checks to make sure the system is working properly. It's also comprised of a call center. So when you call using one of our call boxes, it gets it gets sent to a call center, and then they assess what the need is, and then they patch that through to either CHP or other phones. And then, of course, all of the call boxes have AT&T wireless service, so there's actually a little cell phone in each of those call boxes, and we pay for each of those a monthly fee. And the last, we work with CHP. We contract with them to provide some level of support for them to be our go-to contact, and also to compensate them for some of the support that they give us through the call box calls. So what we've seen in the last 20 years is a steady decline in the use of the call boxes. Looking 20 years ago to today, we're looking at about 9% of the calls that we had in 1999 and 2000. If you want to go to the next slide, thank you. Sorry, I didn't. And yeah, we can. And I just in general, what we're seeing this trend statewide, actually around the country. And as you can imagine, it's because of the widespread adoption of the mobile phone. We had, I think, around 35% of the population owned mobile phones in the 1999-2000 timeframe, and now it's upwards of over 90%. Next slide, please. So looking at this, as I was given this project about a year and a half ago to manage 2 years ago, I wanted to really get a sense of what the program was about before getting into this concept of perhaps removing some of the call boxes. This last year, though, there's an annual meeting of all the call box coordinators throughout the state in LA, and October 1st there was that annual meeting, and it was really at that meeting where it struck me, many of the call box programs were talking about the fact that they had fully removed or at least were planning to reduce their call boxes. And so at that point, I really felt like we really need to take a look at this. And they recommended a consultant, Bernard Arroyo with Jet Consulting, and he does these removal plans throughout the state. One of the first things I wanted to do was to consult with our neighbors because we do have call boxes that kind of overlap, in fact, kind of go back and forth between the two counties. And I found that in Ventura County, they went through a reduction program about 3 years ago. And in San Luis Obispo, they're planning to actually do a call box removal plan probably in the next couple months, actually using Bernard Arroyo as their consultant. Then we held our annual local call box coordination meeting, and that's basically all of our contractors, the CHP, our partners for the call box program. And we had the consultant prepare some of the utilization data, and we presented that to that group. And that was a great first start to kind of vet this idea and get a sense of where they were coming from. These are experts. These are people that work on these call box programs for their whole career, many of them 20, 30 years. They weren't surprised for us to be talking about reducing call boxes, and they recognize that this is a program that's kind of antiquated and phasing out. But we got some good input, CHP included in that. Of course, legal counsel reviewed the plan, and they had some good input in terms of the CEQA requirements that's included in the action today. And if the board does decide you want to approve this plan, then the next step would be we would submit it to Caltrans and CHP officially for a 60-day review period, and they can provide comments. They're not really going to approve or disapprove this plan, but they'd provide us input because one of the things that we want to make sure, and you can maybe go on to the next one, we make sure we want to do is we don't want to remove call boxes outside of pairs. So you want to make sure that you remove both call boxes on both sides of the highway because you don't want someone crossing over to try to get to the call box on the other side of the road. So anyway, this is just a very quick snapshot, 1999-2000 fiscal year versus 18-19. You can see we had a total of 613 calls countywide that year. Next slide, please. Looking at the types of calls that we field through the call box program, these are pretty self-explanatory. The one that isn't so much is call box check. And it's interesting that one is by far the majority of calls that come through. We don't have an exact percentage of what those calls result in, but based on CHP input, they tell us that a number of those calls, what happens is the call is made, the call center can't decipher what the person is saying, or there's no voice at all. And so that triggers CHP having to go down to actually check that call box. So you can imagine that's kind of an intensive thing. They're driving to the call box to check it out. And in some cases, there is a motorist that just didn't know how to operate the call box. But there are also a number of other instances where, because the door is open, the wind is slamming the door, that they'll actually send out a call on their own. And so oftentimes there's nobody there and there's nothing to do. Next slide. So this is a map showing the activity of the call box by different roadway segments. We broke it out into segments that are common characteristics, urban, rural, geography, and so forth. And you can see here that the most intensive use is actually up there on the north side of our county on 166, close to Santa Maria. That gets the highest volume calls. Also, we get a fair number of calls also on 154 between Lake Kachuma and 101. And then you can see the lighter use areas tend to be either very remote areas with almost no traffic, like, for example, the New Kuyama area, but a lot of it is really through the urbanized areas. And urban areas has better cell service, it has more support services. In some cases, like on 101 in the South Coast, we have the Freeway Service Patrol, which helps motorists. Next slide, please. So looking at the criteria for removal, this is something that is fairly standard throughout the state when they're doing these plans. And what we're looking at is call volumes primarily. What we used as a threshold is actually a little lower than some of the other communities. Some communities say less than 5 calls per call box per year. They look at removing those, but we're using a 3 call threshold. We also look at the urban areas and where there's strong cell service. There's some areas where we have half-mile placement, like on 217. In other areas, it's 2 miles per call box. So we looked at that as well in areas where maybe we had more call boxes. We could go from 1 mile to 2 mile and still have some coverage in those areas. And as mentioned before, the important thing of removing them in pairs is very important. Areas that we're not recommending for removal would be areas that have more than 3 calls per year, areas that are remote. One of the input that we got from CHP, Officer Neese, was that call boxes are actually used as landmarks in some circumstances. Some people may still use their cell phone, but they don't know where they're at. And sometimes there's not a mile marker nearby. So they'll actually use the call boxes to try to identify exactly where that person is stranded. So the input we got from CHP was that there's some areas where that's more important, where you need those landmarks. And so we made sure to keep the call boxes in those locations. There's a handful of locations. And then obviously where there's poor cell coverage, that's also really important. And so we had some areas along 101 that we put back in, even though the use was low. Because of the cell coverage, we wanted to make sure that we had coverage there. Next slide, please. So the bottom line here in this plan, we're recommending the removal of 302 of the call boxes out of the 354 that we have. So we'd have 52 remaining call boxes. This map shows in red those that would be removed, and green those that would remain. And again, you can see that coincides with the utilization, the call volume map that we saw before. Next slide, please. So some of the financial considerations for you today. Obviously, one of the main reasons we want to bring this to you is that this program does cost a fair amount of money to maintain. And if we do reduce down to 52 call boxes, we'd be looking at about an annual savings of $165,000 a year. The other really large investment that we incur is when there's an upgrade in technology. That happened a few years back. We had to go from 2G to 3G, and that was a huge investment for us, one lump sum. And so we're anticipating another upgrade from 3G to 4G. That probably would be in the next couple of years. And if we reduce the number, then obviously we don't have to upgrade the 302 that we would have removed. And then last, there's alternate uses for this funding. There's all sorts of things that have opened up. The state did respond when the utilization for these programs started to decline. They opened up some of the criteria of what we can spend the money on. If you want to go to the next slide, Sarkis. And it's a State and Highway Code 2557 that is the code that authorizes us for this program. And you can see a list of the different eligible projects, and there's probably others that are also not included in this. They've provided a fair amount of flexibility. So what I would like to do, next slide please. In terms of next steps, if you decide to approve this plan, the next thing we would submit that to Caltrans and CHP for their formal review. We would go ahead and submit the notice of exemption for the removal, and also we would need to renegotiate our contract with Case System because their financial model rests on the fact that we have 354 call boxes that they charge us for because they charge us per call box. Would be a different financial model for them when we go to 52. They would increase the cost per call box, an increment, maybe like $6 per call box, something like that. But it's certainly the savings we get from removing them far outweighs that additional cost. But we will want to bring that back to you likely in February, that renegotiated contract. And then shortly thereafter, as soon as that contract is executed, then we would authorize them to start the removal process, and it would probably just take a couple months for that to occur. And then what I'd like to do next year is come back to you once we've let the dust settle. We have a sense of what the costs really are with the reduced system. Then I'd like to come back to you and we can talk about maybe some of the uses of that surplus revenue. And with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of Mr. Epperson?
When
Director
you,
Hartman?
thank you, Madam Chair. When you make a call on the call box, where does it go? What happens?
It goes to our call center. And then if it's a call that is related to an accident or emergency or something that involves CHP, then they patch it through CHP, and then CHP handles that. Sometimes it's patched through to a family member, to AAA. Sometimes it will dispatch the Freeway Service Patrol to come to their aid. So that's what happens.
I know people will have various thoughts on where it should go, but one thought is that for additional patrols on the highways where we have the greatest accidents or we've had the greatest calls, perhaps the 154, 166, and the one, if that rises to that level. I hope you'll consider those.
Thank you. Yes, I certainly will.
Any other questions? Director Lavanino?
Thank you. So when you say our call center, now we're down to, we're going to have like 50 of these, and they're generating maybe 3 calls a year. So we're down to a phone call or 2 a day. Is that hopefully that's a...
Not even a day.
Okay.
A year.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So yeah, but if you do 3 times 150, I guess, well, anyway, so it's going to be a very small amount. Mm-hmm. That's not somebody's primary job, is it? Or...
The way that I've had that conversation, thank you, Director Lavanino, the call center is a call center for numerous other programs.
Okay.
And as much as I said, hey, can we get that cost down because there's almost no calls, it's really the fact that they're present and available to answer those calls. That's the cost, yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah. Is there any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. So I would just like to make a comment, or myself, is that I travel that road often, and I know there on 166 in San Luis County is where it's, once you get to Kern County, your cell phones work fine, but it's in San Luis County that's really, really bad. You can't get good cell phones. You don't get any, probably until you get to Cuyama.
Yeah.
So. Okay, do I hear a motion?
Move staff's recommendation.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, and Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Directors Hart. Hartman.
Aye.
Lavanino. Johnson. Rubalcaba.
Aye.
Mosby. Perotti.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Murillo.
Aye.
Sierra.
Aye.
And Chair Patino.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. Okay, item number 6, Ms. Contreras, could you please read that into the record?
Excuse me. Item 6, 2020 Measure A Strategic Plan. Receive an update and give staff direction on the request of the Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee and provide direction on development of Measure A Strategic Plan.
And the staff report is to be made by Mr. Kochek.
Yes, I along with Ms. Bianchi Clement will present this item. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members. Today, we're here to provide an update to the board on the development of the Measure A strategic plan and also to get your direction in terms of input from the Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee. So I will start off with the strategic plan and then hand it off to Ms. Bianchi Clement. As the board is aware, we will be kicking off the development of the Measure A strategic plan for 2020. Per the ordinance, we were required to do this every 5 years. And so with the passage of SB 1 and the infusion of that funding to help us with the Santa Barbara 101 corridor, we have a better idea in terms of the delivery schedule for the 101. So the purpose of the strategic plan overall is to prioritize projects and then to establish a timeline for implementation of those projects. So attached to the staff report, we did provide an initial schedule for the development of the plan along with some milestones as far as where we can have input on the development of the plan. Just yesterday, we did hear from the California Transportation Commission that they are going to delay adoption of the 3 competitive programs, the Solutions for Congested Corridors, the Local Partnership, and the Freight Program. That was based on feedback from some of the regions who will have measures on their ballot in November. And so the commission was able to accommodate delay of the award of those programs to December. So with that, our schedule is contingent upon that. Fortunately, it's not too much of a delay. We still plan on having the strategic plan presented to your board for adoption in December of next year. And so once we know what the staff recommendations come out November 12th, the commission will adopt the 3 programs on December 2nd, and then we'll present the final strategic plan to your board in December. So that's included in an updated schedule that we handed out this morning. But working backwards, we have started the process in terms of updating the plan. We're looking at updating the revenues, project costs, and looking at different policy topics that we'll bring back to TTAC, your board, and the Citizens Oversight Committee. At this point, we will provide something to your board in the spring time frame and then go back and do the heavy lifting in the spring and summer before we present a draft plan to you in September. And as we mentioned, we're looking at 2 scenarios. Scenario 1 is the US 101 project is fully funded through SB 1 next year, and then scenario 2 is where it's partially funded, and then we will have to work through that. So with that, I will go ahead and pause there and then hand it off to Ms. Bianchi Clement. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee met in October of this year, and part of their recommendations to the board in their annual letter was to have an opportunity to provide feedback on the Measure A 2020 strategic plan. So we plan to meet 2 times next year, so in February and in the fall. And so at the board's discretion, we can meet also in September, the end of August, and have the Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee hear a presentation of the draft plan and provide recommendations to the board at your discretion. And so we can have an additional 3rd meeting that's aligned with our TTAC, which is the Technical Advisory Committee. So we're coming to our board because I understand that in previous strategic plans, the Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee has not participated in that review process. And so I just wanted to, so we are coming to your board with that recommendation from the committee and for your discussion.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Clement or Mr. Kochek? None? Okay. Oh, Director Hartman.
I guess I haven't been through this, obviously, this process, so I was just curious, are we simply looking at accelerating the schedule for some existing plan, or are we sort of reviewing things anew?
Director Hartman, through the chair, this is actually with the updated strategic plan. We are looking at both accelerating project schedules where applicable and where we have those opportunities, not just with the 101 project, but also with other remaining named projects, including those in North County. But this is also an opportunity by the board to look at where we are with Measure A and the projects that we have in there. As you're all aware, the investment plan was developed back in 2007 and 2008, and things could change in terms of project priorities and where we are at in terms of delivery. And so there is the opportunity by the board to look at project scopes, certain policies, as well as the delivery schedule.
Thank you. Director Lavanino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, for one, would appreciate the Citizens Oversight Committee taking a look at that. So I don't know if we have any public comment or anything, but okay.
Okay, public comment?
Yes, we have Ms. Lori Tamora.
Thank you. Ms. Tamura.
Good morning. Lori Tamura, a member of the Measure A Committee. I've been through 2 reviews so far as an appointed member, and the discussion that occurred at the last meeting was in regards to this new update. And it seems appropriate that if we're doing almost a reactive review of what's occurred in 17-18, we need some metric to compare where things are and also have influence or input on what's going to be happening over the next 5-10 year cycle. And so I think most of the committee members agreed that they would like to participate in this next review, look at prioritization, look at funding, especially with SB1 and the efforts that have been made for recent projects. There may be some ways of accelerating some of the projects that are happening in the North County. Growth is going to happen in the growth is going to happen in the North County, and I think we're all very interested in how we can be looking at both ends of the county and moving some of these projects forward sooner, because they do take a long time to get ready for engineering, environmental review, all of that effort. So I hope that you'll support the Measure A Committee reviewing this document.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comment in Santa Barbara? No?
None.
Okay. Director Hart?
Thank you, and I very much appreciate the contributions of the Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee. They've been very valuable. They're our ambassadors to the public, so having them weigh in on issues is important. But I do think it is worth saying that the Measure A Oversight Committee was intentionally created to do oversight after the fact of the decisions that the board makes to make sure that what we're doing conforms to the Measure A voter-approved plan, and that was never imagined or considered to be a advisory committee to SBCAG. And so this is a pretty bright line that would be crossed, and I think it could be done okay and work, but it also presents an opportunity for it not to go well. And I think we should be eyes open about this and understand that the real responsibility of this committee is to do oversight, to make sure that the taxpayers have a citizens component in the Measure A plan that accurately reflects the intent of the voters and doesn't necessarily mean that the responsibility that we have as a board to set policy and make decisions about Measure A isn't the primary responsibility of this committee. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I've got one.
Oh, Mr. Lavanino?
So, and you know Measure A better than anybody. I was just looking at the language of it, and it does say, report on all Measure A. Citizens Oversight Committee was created to review and report on all Measure A proposed expenditure plans, financial reports, and audits. So I get what you're saying. It's not, we don't want to weigh in on every item, but I, for one, feel it's appropriate, since it is Measure A. I mean, I don't want to weigh in on every SBCAG item as a regular standing advisory group, but I think it makes sense that, and I kind of read it in there that I don't think they're corralled into just looking into the past. I'm not sure what that would do for, how much good that provides the public, except that we would get a letter that says you guys kind of overstepped your bounds. So, I mean, I think it would be helpful to hear that weigh in ahead of time. We can always choose to disregard it and move forward with whatever we'd like, but I wasn't here. I mean, I voted on Measure A, but I wasn't on the board at the time it was adopted, so I don't really remember, you know, how exactly it was set up, the Oversight Committee, but it looks like we would be able to do this.
Director Sierra?
Thank you. I kind of agree with Mr. Lavanino and Mr. Hart that there were clear lines set for the responsibility of the Oversight Committee. However, they would be looking at it and giving advice. This is done every 5 years, and what advice we take from them is totally up to the board. So I appreciate an extra many pairs of eyes looking at this and giving advice for our board to make decisions on.
And, you know, I would say pretty much the same, and I realize it's an oversight committee, and so it's after we have done what we've done and that we are doing what we said we would do, and I think that's important. I don't have a problem with the oversight committee coming up in an advisory capacity, and I know that a few years ago we did overstep our boundaries, and the oversight committee did let us know that, and we sort of unanimously overstepped it. So, but anyway, that being said, thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, Director Rubalcaba.
Yeah, I was just going to agree as well, because of the fact that sometimes we get stuck in our own perspective. So it's nice to have the oversight committee that may have a different perspective, something we missed, or something like you just said. There was something that happened, and so I think it is valuable to get their input.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
We don't need a motion. We just receive the update, and we just provided direction, and no action is required.
Does everybody agree with the direction, though? I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Are we good? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Item number 7, Ms. Contreras, could you please read item number 7 into the record?
Item 7, Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy Process Overview. Receive an update and provide direction on the process to develop the 2021 Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy.
And the staff presentation will be made by Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the other Mr. Becker, your Director of Planning. This will be a quick item. I'm just here to provide an update on what we're doing with the Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy, and to give you an indication of some of the items that you may see in the coming year or so. But every 4 years, SBCAG is required to update its Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, as it's known in the business. The RTP is a long-range transportation planning document for the region, and among other things, the RTP identifies the funding that we expect to have available and the projects that define our regional priorities. The current plan was adopted in August 2017. The next plan is due in August 2021. Starting with the 2013 plan, SBCAG has been including a sustainable community strategy as part of the Regional Transportation Plan, and that is a requirement of SB 375 of 2008. The Sustainable Community Strategy demonstrates how the region could meet the greenhouse gas reduction targets set by the state of California through a combination of transportation investments and land use development patterns. The current targets for our region are -13% and -17% per capita for target years 2020 and 2035. Staff works through the Joint Technical Advisory Committee on the Regional Transportation Plan. The Joint Technical Advisory Committee is the members of the Technical Transportation Advisory Committee, which is primarily Public Works, staff, as well as the Technical Planning Advisory Committee, which is typically community development or planning staff. Together, the Joint Technical Advisory Committee. The staff report shows a rough calendar of when you can expect RTP-related items, with the biggest being in October, when we will come to your board and ask for the selection of a preferred scenario. That preferred scenario will include the transportation investments for the region, as well as the preferred land use development pattern that the plan will be built around. There are a handful of things that are different this time around. For starters, the current plan has a horizon year of 2040. However, it's a requirement that we plan a minimum of 20 years into the future, and with this plan being adopted in 2021, we had to go beyond 2040, so we're proposing to go out to 2050. In order to accomplish that, we had to update our regional growth forecast, and last January, the board approved the updated regional growth forecast, and that was ultimately so that we could go out to 2050 to align our forecast with our planning. This time around, we are also going to have the RHNA process, or Regional Housing Needs Allocation, going on at the same time, and there's a requirement within SB 375 that those two are consistent. We have new greenhouse gas reduction targets, the -13, -17%. This is the first cycle that those targets will be applicable to. In the last two cycles, our targets were 0% increase or decrease per capita for greenhouse gas emissions. The Air Resources Board set our targets at what we achieved in the last plan. So it's not a stretch if we can repeat what we demonstrated in the current plan. With the next one, then we should be able to achieve the greenhouse gas reduction targets that are assigned to our region. And the last thing that's different is a couple months ago, the board approved a contract with the Community Environmental Council to assist us with the public outreach, and that is ongoing. In previous cycles, that was conducted purely by staff, and this time around, we do have assistance, and we've been working with them several times a week for the last couple of weeks, and you'll start seeing them out in the community before long in January, February. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's all I have.
Any questions of Mr. Becker? Director Rubalcaba?
Yes, I actually was wondering about the public outreach, what you might be doing differently. Hopefully you could hear that, since it seems like a lot, I don't know, this is maybe on a different subject, but a lot of the things that have been happening, and when we've had lots of public coming and saying, we hadn't heard this, we hadn't heard that. One of the things is I'd hope that you can find other ways to be able to reach out to the communities that are mostly affected by our plans. So.
And Director Rubalcaba, that's certainly a challenge, and I think I've learned through my career that people are most concerned with the thing that's going to happen tomorrow next door, and the thing that's going to happen on the other side of the county in 30 years. It's difficult to get them to turn out and be involved in the process. So that's why we wanted to try something different this time. And there are certain requirements through the law, SB 375, that we're required to meet. But we do have some flexibility, and we're going to exercise that flexibility in the first phase, where in the past we have gone out, tried to invite ourselves to basically every special interest group in Santa Barbara County to see if we can get on their agenda or come meet with the staff to explain what we're going and trying to get some input. And this time around, we have the Community Environmental Council is working to get into the communities and to talk to the people. We're also going to talk to the special interests, but we also want to talk to individuals, to get people who aren't aligned with some group to participate in the process.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what my concern was, is that special interests may not be living in the neighborhoods. They just have a special interest. And so with that last meeting, that's what I was concerned about, is how can we make sure that the actual residents that are affected, can be reached. So, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Mosby?
One of the concerns I have is this document, instead of becoming a reporting document of what's anticipated, it becomes a regulating document. And it's used to say, hey, you're exceeding this, therefore you should not do that. As far as growth components, I know arguments and discussions I've used when documents like this are formulated that you're violating this because you're doing that. So do you see it more of a guiding document, a reporting document, or a regulating document?
Director Mosby, there's two aspects. I'd say for the land use side, it's purely an advisory. There's no requirement of consistency between what local agencies do and the Regional Transportation Plan or Sustainable Community Strategy. And that's specified in SB 375 that there's no requirement of consistency. We do have to make some assumptions in the process, as we do have requirements to do so. On the transportation side, though, there's a lot more teeth in the Regional Transportation Plan. It's our guiding document. It identifies what the priorities of our region are. And if something that we propose to do is not consistent with the Regional Transportation Plan, then the first thing we do is talk about amending the Regional Transportation Plan, which we have done on occasion as needed. So it's not fixed in time. We update it every 4 years, and we're also capable of doing amendments as needed. So transportation, it is more teeth. Land use, it's more of an advisory document.
And maybe as you're reporting along with the document, you do have that verbiage in there?
Yes, I think lots of times when we talk about SB 375, we always qualify it as it's not a requirement that the local agencies are consistent.
Thank you.
No more questions? Is there any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Director Hartman.
Should the California waiver be overturned, then I assume we've got to look at these targets in a different way, and we'll be doing both analyses, or how will you handle that?
Director Hartman, that's a very good question. That was a concern of mine that we sought clarification from the Air Resources Board. So the model that we use to calculate greenhouse gas emissions it's called MFAC, Emissions Factors Calculator. It's a model prepared by the Air Resources Board, and those assumptions of the tailpipe emissions are built into that calculator. So my worry is that tool is not going to be relevant anymore. However, in our consultation with the Air Resources Board, they've informed us that for the Regional Transportation Plan process, we are still working within the confines of that tool. And then statewide, there's many different factors that or aspects of greenhouse gas or sources of greenhouse gas emissions that the state is seeking to reduce. This is just one of them. Yes.
Any other questions, staff? Okay, is there any public comment?
I believe Mr. Becker in Santa Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Becker.
Mr. Becker.
Yes. Santa Barbara?
Yeah, I'm glad Supervisor Hartman mentioned the possibility that the waiver is going to be revoked. It shows at least one of you is thinking ahead on this one. At least one of you. Caltrans, in the the 240 fast forward document, which is the main document for what you're talking about now, Caltrans in the county was asked to study how to reduce vehicle miles traveled. You people in Caltrans, in complete gross violation of CEQA, in an environmental impact report document, refused, in violation of state law, refused to answer questions about how to reduce vehicle miles traveled. That document was then approved by your board, and then Caltrans, the state of California, after receiving complaints about how you people refused to obey CEQA, Caltrans then rubber stamped that, basically doing what you people did, which is refuse to obey CEQA and respond to questions, valid concerns, in an environmental impact report. Amazing. If Caltrans in the state of California obeyed CEQA, the CAFE standards and California emission waiver can be, the CAFE standards don't have to be tightened, and the emission waiver can be done away with if you simply obeyed CEQA and listened to the people about asking you to reduce vehicle miles traveled. Now, Mary Nichols, who is the director of the California Air Resources Board, in a before Congress, the Energy and Transportation Committee in June of this year, stated that it was perfectly possible for the state of California to achieve its emission reductions through the reduction of vehicle miles traveled. She actually said that. Why should the other states in this union have to suffer by having cars built and trucks built that they don't want because California wants to tighten up CAFE standards? If California simply obeyed its own laws, according to Mary Nichols, and reduced vehicle miles traveled through good planning, you wouldn't have to tighten CAFE standards. And that's what I'm trying to get at. It's a complicated thing because it goes from the state to the county to the feds. But my point is this: if the state of California obeyed its own laws, the emission waiver can be removed completely and you would meet your objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. Okay, I'll bring this back to the board. Any discussion? Comments? No? So we'll receive the update, and because no action is required on this, thank you. So, Ms. Contreras, could you read item?
Madam Chair, if we
Yes.
may, I think Rachel has something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, Madam Chair, I consulted with Executive Director Kern on item 6, and
Okay.
since this is a change from what we've done before, having the Citizen Oversight Committee take on a new role, I think the record would be a little cleaner if the minutes reflect a vote of formal direction to Director
Okay.
Kern on how to process this. So I just recommend that the board would just go back to item 6. We can take a vote. Prior to that, just take public comment again, if there is any. There wasn't any last time.
Take public comment on item 6? And then vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Any public comment on item 6?
There's no public comment.
Okay. Okay, so I need a motion and a second on item 6.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with staff recommendation and also give direction to staff to work with the Citizens Oversight Committee to receive their input on the strategic plan.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. I have a couple of those. Okay. So, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Directors Hart? Aye. Hartman?
Aye.
Lavanino? Johnson? Rubalcaba?
Aye.
Mosby?
Aye.
Perotti?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Murillo?
Aye.
Sierra?
Aye.
And Chair Patino.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay. We're getting along just great today, aren't we? 11-0, wow. Wait till next year. Okay, item number 8. Ms. Contreras, could you please read item 8 into the record?
Item 8, election of officers for 2020. Elect board chair and vice chair for 2020.
And the staff presentation will be made by Margie Kern.
Elect board chair and vice chair for 2020.
I could have done that, but I'm giving you the responsibility. Thank you so much. Okay. Any questions?
I would like to make a motion to nominate Director Hart for chair and Director Sierra for vice chair.
Okay. Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Oh, public comment?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion? Discussion in Santa Barbara?
None.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Directors Hart? Aye. Hartman? Aye. Lavanino? Aye. Johnson? Aye. Rubalcaba? Aye. Mosby?
Aye.
Perotti?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Murillo?
Aye.
Sierra?
Aye.
And Chair Patino.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay. Moving right along. Do I give you the gavel now or later? January? Oh, okay.
There's an emergency, you have to come.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, which is the 1-minute reports. Shall we start down?
I guess I'll just put in a plug for Solvang's Yule Fest, which is going on right now. We got a drone show coming up on Saturday, and the light show is really cool. Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Come on down and visit us. Come have some pastries and hang out and do some wine tasting. That's a very good question. This is, I guess, from what I've heard, this is the only one that's going to be happening in the Central Coast, and it's obviously you guys know what drones are, but I guess they put some sort of lights on them and they throw thousands of them up in the air and do a big show and put together pictures of various things. And it's kind of a 3D effect as well. So I have never seen one, so this is going to be the first for me as well. So 6 o'clock Friday night. Yeah, come on down. Be great.
Great.
The board on Tuesday, we approved a contract changing the northbound on-ramp at Clark Avenue so that if anybody's ever tried to make a left after you come off that on-ramp, it can get pretty crazy right there. So there will be a signal. It's going to be a signalized interchange now. So should take a few months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The City of Goleta submitted a letter to Caltrans recently regarding the off-ramp at Stork and Glen Annie having issues, and we are very concerned about that off-ramp. And I just would like to remind Caltrans that we would love to get together, have a meeting, sit at the table, and brainstorm about ideas of what we could do to make that off-ramp safer and come up with some creative ideas. Thank you.
Director Mosby.
I want to give Caltrans a thank you for a lot of the projects they've done in the area of Lompoc and the surrounding roads and overseeing the contracts. A lot of times Caltrans gets a bad rap because people are stopping and going, but you know, hopefully we can get your numbers, approval numbers going up, but you guys really are doing a good job all the way around.
Thank you. Director Hart? Director Hartman?
I don't want to steal Director Kern's thunder about the Highway 154 safety meeting, but Director Perotti, Director Sierra, Director Hart, and myself, along with Assemblymember Lamone and Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson, were there to a full house, and we'll be doing follow-on, and I'll leave the rest to our director.
Director Sierra.
I've got a couple. First of all, at our last council meeting, we approved a $10,000 contribution to Open Streets, which is going to be in the Valley next October, $5,000 cash, $5,000 in kind. And following the 154 Safety Forum, I truly appreciate the City of Solvang hosting it. For SBCAG, I forgot when I was thanking people for being there, for SBCAG for putting it on. The pizzas that were donated by the city, the daycare. It was a really good turnout, and I also want to thank everybody for the vote for vice chair. It is truly an honor. Thank you.
Director Rubalcava?
Okay, we have a few things going on. We are starting discussions on safe route to schools. Apparently, we're having a meeting with Caltrans in January regarding the Santa Maria Bridge. There's some changes happening with the bridge. And we're also having a meeting with Caltrans regarding the 166 in Guadalupe road signalization. We're doing a mobility study in January with a public workshop on January 12th, and we'll finalize that in February. And we received ATP funding for a sidewalk project that we're hoping to have done in the first half of 2020.
Thank you. Director Murillo.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So Tuesday was the last meeting of the year for the council, and we approved a bike share program, and they brought in the bikes for us to look at. They're beautiful, and we will time the rollout of the program with Cycle Mania. So in the month of May, when we celebrate and encourage bike commuting and bike recreation, bike safety, and so they will be docked for neatness. You know how we are about our downtown, so we just didn't want them everywhere willy-nilly, and so they'll be really contained. They don't look very tall, and they're nice and compact for the bikes to go into. So we're excited about that. It's an all-electric fleet, and we're doing downtown, waterfront, and all the way up to City College is the mapping for now, hoping to extend it to the east side and the west side eventually. Other stuff in general, our MTD Bus Agency is rebuilding its transit center. In general, the city looks a little torn up because we're spending our Measure C, sales tax revenue, fixing the streets. And then Southern California Gas, they're tearing up streets for their purposes. Edison. So we get some complaints, but we try to tell people, hey, it's going to be better later. And then the council also approved building of affordable housing on one of our commuter lots. That's the one at Carrillo and Castillo. And people are always eyeballing our parking lots for different purposes, right? Housing being one of them. So we're working with our housing authority on that. That's exciting news. Ready for the holiday break. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it was December 8th, we had our Parade of Lights, which is put on by the 3 Rotary clubs in Santa Maria and the Rotary Club of Napomo. And so all the entries have to be decorated with, and I don't know what the number of, but it's lots of lights. And so we did that. And then last Tuesday night, which was our last meeting of the year, we celebrated our hometown heroes, and that's with all of the men and women that have served or are serving in the military. And then we hang the banners right down here off of Crossroads. And tonight we will have our 4th town hall meeting of the year, and that'll be on the southwest quadrant of Santa Maria. And we've been doing we did the northwest, east quadrant, the southwest, northwest, southeast, and the southwest tonight. And so we hear from all the neighborhoods in that area, or if people want to come from any other part of the neighborhood, they're welcome to do so. I've been traveling 166 a lot lately, and my kudos to Caltrans. It looks, especially at night, you can really see where you're going, and that rumble strip in the middle will wake you up if you are falling asleep. Definitely, it is really a rumble strip. So I appreciate that. The only thing we need more passing lanes. Especially for that guy that's doing 45 miles an hour. I had 2 big trucks pass me on Tuesday, and it gets a little scary. The guy that was doing 45 miles an hour should have really been terrified, but he didn't seem to be. But anyway. So thank you all for your reports, and let's go to the Executive Director's report. Did Ms. Kern?
Did Al Clark have anything to
Oh,
report?
I'm sorry. I keep forgetting about Mr. Clark.
Thank you for asking, Madam Chair. We have nothing to report down here in Santa Barbara.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Kern.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank all the participation from Monday night. All of our members were in attendance, and I think we had over 100 to 150 people attend. We also had a lot of staff, CHP, Caltrans. We had our interpreters there. We had county staff and SBCAG staff and the volunteers we had in the, of my staff helping out. It was a well-attended meeting, and I think we accomplished our goal of getting out the word that's driver behavior and safety is an important aspect of everything we do, and every time we get on the highway, we take that responsibility seriously and think about others as we drive and try to drive as safely as we can. The press that we got was pretty amazing before and after. I think I heard it on the radio probably 100 times of John Palmentary of letting me know that the 154 town hall meeting was happening. So I think it worked. So I look forward to the committee moving forward, and I'll work with the chair, Director Hartman, in scheduling those meetings in the future. And we may want to just think about other areas that we may need to do this. So moving on, I had a really early morning the next day. I think we got back to the office at 10 o'clock on Monday, but I had to leave for Sacramento first thing on Tuesday morning. We had a big meeting with Caltrans and the California Transportation Commission on our multimodal project moving forward. We have some critical path items for the project moving forward, and it's critical that we make sure that our partners are on board of what's happening and are supportive moving forward, and I think we accomplished that. We had a huge issue that we needed to deal with, and I think we have a resolution to it. So everything's moving forward in the right direction. On Wednesday, I had the honor of going down to Pasadena to meet with Hillary Norton, one of the newest California Transportation directors. She's a commissioner regarding our multimodal highway project, and also personally inviting her to our ribbon cutting and groundbreaking that we're having on March 26th and our reception on March 25th. I also want to make sure that you all have this on your calendars, because this is a pretty big event for this agency and this region, and you know, we're accomplishing what you set out, 20 years ago. It's happening. So I want to make sure that you are available on the 25th for a reception that's going to start at 5:30. The exact location to be determined, but it will be near the waterfront in Santa Barbara. And then the ribbon cutting on the 26th at noon in Carpinteria. There will be a ribbon cutting for the Linden Casitas project and a groundbreaking for the Phase 4A. So those things will be happening simultaneously. And I think that's the first time ever anybody's done a ribbon cutting and groundbreaking in the same event. So something to be proud of. I do want to give another plug. I didn't get any responses last month on my plug for the CalCog conference that's happening in April 5th through the 7th. It's in Riverside. You know, you don't get an opportunity to go to Riverside very often, but we do have a pretty good program. You know, this is a lot of elected officials go to this conference. I think it's a good opportunity for you to understand what's happening, not only at the regional level, but at the statewide level, and how we all work together in fighting for things to happen. I think SB1 is one of those things that were accomplished through CalCog and supporting and getting us all together. So I really recommend that you attend this. It's a great training opportunity and just whatnot. So, and SBCAG is paying the bill. So let me know. We can probably afford 2 to 3 members, and Holly Sierra is already going because she is our CalCog member. So we'd love to have the company. We'll be carpooling. You can drive to Riverside with us. So far, we'll be canceling the North County and South Coast subregional meetings for January. Because SBCAG offices will be closed from Christmas Eve to January 1st, and will be back open on January 2nd, but the agendas would have needed to be published in that time frame, so we won't be in the office to make those meetings happen. So at this, let's just cancel those meetings with your permission of the chairs. Well, we'll have to elect a chair in February for both of those committees. And so I already mentioned the closing of our office. And last but not least, happy holidays to everybody. I look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up with the 154. We'd had a pre-meeting, and the staff of all the agencies did a fabulous job on this frequently asked questions, and that was available to all the press and to all the public. And we got more ideas, and so I think we're going to get this on the website and continue that as a dialogue. And I think people felt heard, and I think, given what Santa Maria is doing, and our efforts to be where people are and to be responsive, I think this is a really good example as well. So we'll keep it going.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Director Albonino.
Yeah. When you mentioned the website, I spent a lot of the morning on the SPCAG website and the Measure A website. Just wanted to say, I don't know who maintains that, but it is really user-friendly. I mean, you can click through all the different programs and projects, and no, it's.
I wasn't sure where you were going
Sorry.
with that. Yeah.
No, it's really, you can go through all the projects and the funding, and everything's on there. It's really nice.
Yeah, good. I'm glad it's useful to you, and that's the purpose.
I have one more
Oh,
thing.
yes, Director
and it's
Rubalcaba.
A little bit off subject. I just wanted to put it out there in case anybody would like to contact me, but I have been chosen to be on a policy committee for the League of Cities on the community services. So if you guys need to, want information, just let me
Good.
know.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 11, the Caltrans Director's Report.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm Scott Eads here again for Tim Gubbins in the director's slot today. He is back to Sacramento. This is 2 times in the week for him. Busy week. So I just want to also highlight and recognize the 154 Town Hall. It seemed like it was, all reports that I received, a really successful event, really good input, and really well orchestrated. So kudos to everybody that helped to pull that together. I want to highlight a couple of projects where we've had environmental documents that have just been released and out on the street now and open for public comment. The first is the San Jose Creek Bridge Replacement Project. They're studying a couple different alternatives, and we have an issue there with reactive aggregate where the concrete is not going to hold up forever, so we need to replace those structures. So that's what the environmental document is looking at. It's an initial study in mitigated neg deck, and we'll have a comment period open until January 17th. And then the second is the Santa Claus Lane Bike Path Project that's being led by SBCAG. Caltrans is the lead agency for CEQA and NEPA. And so that document has just been released. That's studying bike path connection between Santa Claus Lane in the county and the city of Carpinteria at the Carpinteria Avenue connection. Great connection. We're accepting comments on that until January 6th. Again, it's an initial study in mitigated neg deck. And then in terms of where those documents are available, they're available at local libraries and also the Caltrans office. So if anybody's looking for specific libraries, I have that information. I can pass it on. And then also want to just highlight ongoing work on 192. We're still working to finish up some of the bridge elements, specifically right now on Toro Creek Bridge. And so there's some daytime closures that are happening right now, and they're open at the evenings and weekends. And there's day tours already set up. That's been going on for about a week, and we expect it to go on a little bit more, and we'll have that work completed by the end of this year, weather permitting. And that's all I have for today. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yeah. Director Murillo.
Sir, did I hear that Caltrans is getting a new director at the state level?
Ooh, thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
Yes, as a matter of fact. We have a new director that's been appointed by the governor, Tokes Amashankan. Yes, and he has been here on the job for just a few weeks. He is from Tennessee, actually, and he worked with the Tennessee Department of Transportation. He has a strong background in bicycle and pedestrian and alternative modes. And so that certainly will be a focus for him, but he also has the larger vision of the department in mind. The reality that we also need to address interregional travel, and safety is a big focus as well. So yeah, there'll be more in the future. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, moving on to item number 12, committee meetings, Coast Rail Coordinating Council Policy Committee meeting. Director Murillo.
Thank you so much. We met at Ventura City Hall. They were very hospitable to us there. And as you know, the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments, their COG is the staff for our Coast Rail Coordinating Council. So our CRCC Policy Committee approved staff to work with the CRCC Legislative Advocate to introduce a legislative resolution that recognizes the coast route as an underused rail corridor that currently connects the state's two mega regions, but does not currently have any state-supported rail service north of San Luis Obispo or south of San Jose. So we expect to introduce the resolution in January, back in session. And the other, another item, the Policy Committee approved the selection of a consultant to develop a coast route service implementation plan. The plan will take a look at past studies and come up with specific recommendations for how additional rail service can be provided and operated in the corridor. And then, if you haven't already heard, SB 742 was signed by the governor. So now people can buy the bus tickets and ride the Amtrak buses even though they haven't bought a train ticket. So that was good news to everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. There are no communications, right, Madam Clerk? Okay. Okay. So this brings us to the adjournment. I would like to thank everyone on this body for helping me out. Thank the SBCAG staff that's been just great, and it's been very helpful. And so now I hand it over to you, and thank you very much, Mr. Hart. You'll have a great time. Don't screw it up. Anyway, thank you very much, and have Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you.